Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we are going to be making a skillet berry crisp with almond cornmeal topping out of Lazarus Lynch's Son of a Southern Chef cookbook. And to get this out of the way, yes, I have a finger splint, so I'll have to be very careful with this hand today. It's nothing major, honestly. It's a small fracture. It's fine. So this is a different take on a crisp because a crisp usually has oatmeal in the topping, and instead of oatmeal he's going to use cornmeal, which will give it a sort of a different texture and flavor. And I think that's interesting because this is also uses blueberries, and we have made a blueberry, I think she called it a cobbler, but it had a cornmeal crust from Deep Run Roots, and I'll link that up here. So sort of the same vibe as that, you know, cornmeal and blueberries. Interesting. We'll see how it turns out. The first thing is I'm going to make the crumble topping. And so I just have to mix a bunch of stuff and use my hand. So I'll be left-handed today. That'll be interesting. But so we're just going to combine, we have some all-purpose flour. We have the cornmeal. We have some brown sugar. We have some slivered almonds, not slivered, sliced almonds. Slivered are sort of more matchstick sort of shape. These are just sort of sliced thinly. You can use any nuts you like in a crisp, but I thought this was interesting. We're obviously going to make it as close to the original as we can. We need a pinch of fine sea salt. So there's that. And then we have some butter, supposed to be at room temperature. Mine's a little bit chillier, but it's been out for a while. And we're going to mix this with your hands until it's crumbly. So I'm gonna do that. All right, I'm gonna call this good. You just don't want any huge pieces of butter, and you want it all to look kind of like wet sand with little bits of rock in it. And that's good for this. And I'm gonna go put this in the refrigerator until we're ready for it, to sort of harden that butter back up a little bit. And then we're gonna make the berry part, and I'm gonna wash my hand. Now we're ready to make the berry part of our berry crisp, and I have a 10-inch cast iron skillet here, which is what he suggests you make this in. And in this I have some raspberries and some blueberries. You could use whatever mix of berries you want. This is about 2/3 raspberries to 1/3, 2/3 blueberries to 1/3 raspberries. So that's what is in the recipe. And we're gonna add, okay, in the recipe, he says, I think making the filling part needed some copy editing here, because it mentions combining blueberries, cornstarch, brown sugar, flour, which is not listed in the filling ingredients, lemon juice and cinnamon, but it doesn't mention the raspberries. So we're just gonna mix all of the stuff that's in the filling and not worry about flour, because pretty sure the cornstarch will do whatever flour would do in here. So we're gonna go by the filling list instead of the list that's in the instructions, because there's no amounts there. So we've got some brown sugar again. We have some cornstarch, which, like I said, will help thicken like flour would, but sort of without lumps. Flour is more likely to get lumpy. Cornstarch, we have a little bit of cinnamon here. And then we're gonna add just some lemon juice. Lemon juice and blueberries go really well together. And that's all we need of that. And now I'm just gonna mix this with a spoon to get it all mixed up. So I've got everything pretty well mixed up. And I'm just kind of making sure my raspberries are evenly distributed among the blueberries. So there's not just half with raspberries and half without. And I'm gonna clean up a little bit, and then we're gonna take the topping out of the refrigerator and put it on here. Now, this has been in the refrigerator. It hasn't really had a lot of time to cool because we've done this all at once, but you could make this, excuse me, you could make this very far ahead of time. It would be fine. But now we're just gonna sprinkle this crumble mixture over the top of the berries sort of evenly. Okay, so I've made a huge mess, but I've got my crumble topping all over this, and we're gonna bake it at 375 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. You want the top to be nice and golden brown, and you want it to be bubbling sort of up around the edges and probably in the middle too, honestly, because usually a crisp will make little bubbles sort of all over the place. And once it is brown to your liking, it's done. He says to let it cool, but serve it warm with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. So we'll let you know what it looks like when we think it's done and how long that takes. But yeah, that is it. It's pretty simple, right? We'll let you know what we think. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Skillet Berry Crisp with almond cornmeal topping from Lazarus Lynch's Son of a Southern Chef cookbook. We enjoyed this recipe. The kids are kind of on the berries, but I'm sure you could switch out the fruit like you can with almost any crisp or cobbler recipe. And it just sort of changes the cooking time, and sometimes it changes the what you need to thicken it, whether it needs more thickening or less, depending on how much juice comes out of the fruit. Anyway, our kids mostly chose to have just plain ice cream, so it was enough to serve 4 adults plus extra. Probably at least, that was only about half of it. So I would say it's about 8 servings, 8 to 10 it says in here. So I think that's about right. I thought the almond and cornmeal was an interesting take on the crisp instead of, I almost always use pecans instead of almonds. And I use, and like almost everybody, I used oatmeal instead of the cornstarch. Cornmeal, that's what I meant. So I used oatmeal instead of the cornmeal, but so it had a little bit less of a chew because, you know, cornmeal is ground finer. But I liked the flavor. It was good. It still felt, you know, like a crisp and not like a cobbler. So that was good. And we were able to reheat it the next day, and it still tasted really good. And it's really easy. You could do this in any oven-proof skillet. It does not have to be a cast iron skillet, but if you have one, that's great. And the good thing is you don't have to preheat that. Some recipes you preheat it and then you put stuff in it. This, you can sort of put it in it, put it all in the skillet, and then wait to bake it until you're ready. So that's good. And other than that, it was a really easy recipe like most crisps are, and it just has a little bit of a different take on it with the cornmeal and the almonds. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.